Coming up, the Bengals hand the Dolphins their first loss of the year, and Lamar Jackson gets ready to face off against Josh Allen and the Bills. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NFL, local experts taking you from game to game in week 4 of the NFL season. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens, and thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Two of the most electric quarterbacks in the game meet in Baltimore on Sunday. Josh Allen enters off his first loss of the year to try and knock off the red-hot Lamar Jackson in one of the weekend's headliners for sure. Locked On Ravens previews that star-studded affair.
The Baltimore Ravens must be able to limit Josh Allen as well as establish an identity on defense if they want to beat Josh Allen and those Buffalo Bills in week 4. I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens, and it's easier said than done to limit Josh Allen, that explosive Buffalo offense that has playmakers like Stephon Diggs and more. But on defense, Baltimore is currently 30th in net yards per attempt given up through the air. They're 26th in yards per attempt allowed on the ground. They have to establish some sort of identity and make sure that they can both stop Buffalo on the ground and through the air, or at least limit one of those areas for Buffalo throughout the entirety of the game. On offense, the Ravens should prioritize the deep passing game if they can let things develop down the field against a very beat-up Buffalo secondary that it's unknown who will be available and who will not be for that team. And if the Bills are bringing the blitz, the Ravens have the short passing game option for them, whether it does involve Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, Mark Andrews, and more. They have the weapons on their offensive side of the ball to make this one a shootout, and I think it will be a very high-scoring affair for both sides. A game that I think has the potential to most definitely be the game of the week. For more on this Baltimore Ravens team and their week 4 matchup with the Buffalo Bills, be sure to follow the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Thursday night football saw the Cincinnati Bengals pull away in the fourth quarter to improve to 2-2 on the season, but a head injury to the Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa took the attention for most of the night. Locked On Dolphins and Locked On Bengals take you through everything that happened in Cincy on Thursday night.
The Miami Dolphins falling to the Cincinnati Bengals in week 4 of the 2022 NFL season by a final score of 27-15. Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. A catastrophic night for Miami in Cincinnati with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa suffering head and neck injuries on a hard hit late in the first half of this football game. And the game never really recovered from there, Tua Tagovailoa having to be stretchered off. Reports at the end of the game indicated that Tagovailoa was expected to be discharged and would be returning home with the team. But a somber and scary injury for the Dolphins quarterback just 4 days after appearing wobbly after a hit suffered against the Buffalo Bills.
A fast start and a strong finish gets the job done for the Cincinnati Bengals against Miami on Thursday Night Football. I'm Jake Lisco from the Locked On Bengals podcast, and while the main story out of the Thursday night game is Tua Tagovailoa's health and hoping that he recovers well from his head and neck injury, reportedly flying back with the team, for the Bengals, the game is a game that gets them to 2-2, 27-15. The defense holding one of the more efficient offenses in the Dolphins in check throughout the game, playing great football on third downs, playing great situational football with 2 takeaways on interceptions for Von Bell, getting good pressure throughout the game. In general, doing a great job against an explosive offense. On the other side of the ball, Burrow and the Bengals offense got off to a hot start with a fantastic first drive that I thought was well scripted for Zach Taylor and this offense. And despite some lulls in the middle of the game, they did enough and finished the game with what I thought, again, was a fantastic play call in the low red zone to call play action tight end leak to get that game-clinching touchdown for Hayden Hurst when Miami was ready to sell out on the run. For more on the Cincinnati Bengals, who get to 2-2 with their Thursday Night Football victory, check out Locked On Bengals, covering the Cincinnati Bengals every day.
The Colts and Titans are going to face off twice in the next 4 weeks. Crucial games for both teams in a pretty weak AFC South. Both are Locked On Titans and Locked On Colts hosts take you through how each team can pick up win number 2 this weekend.
The Tennessee Titans must stop the run if they want to win on the road against the Indianapolis Colts in week 4. My name's Tyler Rowland, host of the Locked On Titans podcast. It's an AFC South matchup between the Colts and the Titans. That means it's going to be a physical battle, and it's going to be focused on the run game on both sides with both teams. For the Titans, right now, they have struggled with the run game early in the season. They're the fourth worst run defense in the NFL right now, giving up over 140 yards per game. That number is buoyed a ton by a pitiful Week 1 performance against the New York Giants. Can the Titans turn that run defense around? Can they shore up on the edge and with their linebackers and make sure that they hold Jonathan Taylor down, put Matt Ryan in third and long situations, and ultimately get the Colts off the field? That's what I'll be watching for in this big divisional matchup for the Titans. For more analysis, check out the Locked On Titans podcast, free and available on all platforms Monday through Friday, year-round. Locked On Titans, it's your team every day.
After a huge, potentially season-salvaging win last Sunday, the Indianapolis Colts need to avoid a letdown after riding such a high this week at home against the Tennessee Titans. This is Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of the Locked On Colts podcast. Zach, the Colts came out nearly lifeless in the first couple weeks of the season, but last week they beat one of the NFL's top clubs in the Chiefs. What do you think they need to make sure to do this Sunday to keep things going against the Titans?
I mean, honestly, it's just riding the highs of what worked this past week, but improving on those negatives, because for everything that the Colts did right to get this upset win against Kansas City Chiefs, there were still some negative points that made this a very ugly and sloppy win. They need to improve the pass protection. They need to come out ready to stop the run against Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans. So I do think the Colts have everything that they possibly need to beat this Titans team. They just need to keep carrying forward this momentum that they have from this past week. But thanks for checking in, everybody. For more on your Indianapolis Colts and this weekend's matchup, be sure to check into the Locked On Colts podcast every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Coming up, Zach Wilson makes his season debut and the Jags will try to upset the Eagles. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by Brightco. We all kind of hate insurance, right? But Brightco has turned that whole experience around, especially when you want to insure the most important things that you have. I know I've misplaced my wedding rings before, and that is not something that you want to deal with, and you want to get rid of that stress if you can. For $5 a month, you get totally comprehensive coverage, and it won't take you more than 2 minutes to set up on your cell phone. You can check it out at bright.co/locked on. The Jacksonville Jaguars go into week 4 off of 2 big wins over the Colts and the Chargers. They're going to need every little bit of momentum that they can get if they want to knock off the last unbeaten team in the league in the Philadelphia Eagles. Locked On Jags tells us how Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville can pull off the upset.
The Jaguars need to put the hurt on Jalen. I'm Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars with the Jacksonville Jaguars keys to victory. Jalen Hurts needs to feel the pressure, but he doesn't need to be given an alley to get away. The Jaguars have to put pressure on him with their front 4 out of their base or their nickel, but those pass rushers have to be cognizant to not allow him a way out. They have to play a little bit of gap and hole, keep gap responsibility, and force Jalen Hurts to throw in a hurry from the pocket. They'll have a hard time covering those wide receivers if they can't contain him and have to keep extra people in to watch him and make sure that he does not get away. For more Jacksonville Jaguars coverage, check me out on the Locked On Jaguars podcast every single day, where it's your team every day.
Zach Wilson is back. He will make his official season debut for the Jets this weekend in Pittsburgh. After a long wait, Locked On Jets looks at what to expect in the first game reps of the year for Wilson.
The New York Jets must protect Zach Wilson to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday. I'm John, the host of the Locked On Jets podcast, and Zach Wilson is making his 2022 debut this weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He missed the first 3 games of the season with a knee injury he suffered in the preseason opener. This is good news for the Jets. However, they have some challenges up front. This week, George Fant became the team's 3rd tackle to end up on injured reserve. That means the starting tackle duo this weekend will be Connor McDermott and rookie Max Mitchell. The Jets will need to do everything in their power to neutralize the Pittsburgh pass rush to keep their second-year quarterback standing upright. That means running the ball effectively. It means designing some quick-hitting plays to get the ball out of Zach Wilson's hands quickly. And it means leaving in some extra help. The two tight ends the Jets have, CJ Uzama and Tyler Conklin, will likely stay in a little bit more frequently than usual in order to help out these tackles facing this Pittsburgh pass rush. For more on the New York Jets and this weekend's matchup, be sure to check out the Locked On Jets podcast every Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The AFC West is supposed to be the toughest in football this season. It's definitely been tough enough for the Broncos and Raiders so far. Both teams still winless in their division. One will get that first AFC West win on Sunday. Locked On Broncos tells you what Denver needs to do to send Vegas to an 0-4 start.
Can Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos offense finally get going this week against a depleted Las Vegas Raiders secondary? I'm Cody Roark, host of the Lockdown Broncos podcast, and the biggest key for the Broncos this week is to take advantage of one of the NFL's struggling defenses right now with the Las Vegas Raiders, who are allowing opponents to score on 80% of their red zone possessions. Not to mention they're giving up a lot of yards through the air, they're giving up a lot of yards on the ground. They simply don't have enough sack production so far through 3 weeks of the regular season. Max Crosby only has 2 sacks for them. So this is an opportunity for the Broncos to get some divisional wins here, to go on the road in hostile territory, and for Russell Wilson, this Broncos offense, to let things fly a little bit against the Las Vegas Raiders secondary, who could be without Nate Hobbs or Rock Ya-Sin this week. They're depleted on the back end there. This could be an opportunity for Russell Wilson and company to take care of business on the road, AFC West divisional play. Make sure you check out Lockdown Broncos, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts or whether you watch on YouTube as well. Let's ride.
That's it for today on Locked On Game to Game NFL. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, check out your team's Locked On podcast as well. I'm Kanani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.